Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna go on a bit of an archaeology tour with our Grape PC, the stoned virus infected XT machine. I thought it would be interesting to share with you exactly what kind of software was installed on this machine, just to give you a glimpse on how it was used and see if we can learn something from the original owner of this machine. Now, this isn't going to be the easiest task, as we are dealing with a stoned virus infected PC with a hard drive that definitely has some issues. A lot of applications and games fail to start, but we'll do our best to see what we can recuperate from the machine. In this video, I am going to focus on seeing if we can repair the hard drive or diagnose what's wrong with it, get all of the files from this machine copied onto another computer so that at least we have a backup, and then see what kind of games and applications we had on there. But first, a word from our sponsor. And this video is sponsored by PCBWay, a full-feature custom PCB prototyping service. If you need PCB prototypes, SMD stencils, PCB assembly, flexible PCBs, or advanced PCBs, PCBWay has got you covered. Shipping to more than 170 countries worldwide, processing thousands of PCB orders a day, PCBWay combines excellent pricing with excellent customer service. Check out their website to get a quote or get in touch with their friendly support staff if you have any more questions. But now, back to the Grape machine and its failing hard drive. Now, despite the fact that we can pull up directory listings and see files, when we launch applications, sometimes we get these sector not found errors, which makes it really difficult to launch applications. It's very tedious. Some applications eventually do start, but others don't. They just give the sector not found error, and then as soon as you enter the application, it basically just hangs. So it's a very unstable system. So how can we fix that? Well, there's this application called Spinrite that we can use that is able to, recover unreadable data from these old hard drives. So I'm going to be using Spinrite 5.0 for this, and I'm just going to do a scan of the entire hard drive. Now, before we do that, it needs to do some integrity checks, so that just basically prepares the application for the actual scanning. Now, there are different levels of scanning. It's a pretty complicated application, probably deserves a video of its own, but for now I'm just going to be doing a level 2 surface scan, which will basically go through each sector of the hard drive and see if it finds any damaged sectors, and it will check to see if it can recover data. So it basically goes through every sector of the hard drive, as you can see here. And when it encounters a problem, which you will hear from the sound of the hard drive, it will do its magic and it will try to repair that damaged sector. So as you can see here, it was able to recover some data here, and it then just continues. However, I did encounter an issue with Spinrite because after a while, as it was processing again another bad sector, it went ahead and did about its business. But instead of just repairing it, it went into this kind of endless loop where there was initially lots of hard disk activity, but it wasn't able to get past that bad sector. So it definitely wasn't able to repair it. And to make matters worse, at some point, the hard drive activity just stopped. Spinrite did seem to still be doing something, but in the end it became totally unresponsive. There was no animation anymore. The screen was kind of stuck, and I left with no option but to reboot the computer. Now, fortunately, Spinrite does have the option to continue where it left off, because otherwise this would be a very tedious and long process. But as you can see here, it picked up at around 7%. It went through all of the sectors. It was able to recover some data, and I was pretty happy. I thought I was be able to finish this entire surface scan, but unfortunately, I hit a little bit of a snag because although it was able to repair a lot of stuff, it eventually got stuck at around 15-16% of the disk, and it just wasn't able to continue from there. I tried multiple times, But unfortunately, I just had to give up completely because it just wouldn't get past that 16%, despite the fact that it was able to recover some data from these damaged sectors. So yeah, that was a bit unfortunate. So at that point, I just shifted my focus on getting the files out of this computer and onto another computer just to see what we had. Now, to get the files out of the computer, we're going to be copying them to another computer, so we need to hook up the two computers together. And for that, we're going to be using this. That's right. This is a parallel cable that we're going to be using to hook up the two computers. Now, this uses the parallel port of the computer, and even semi-modern computers still have a parallel port, like this Athlon XP machine that I'll be using. So I'm just going to be hooking up the cable right there. And obviously on our Grape computer, on our display adapter, we also have a parallel port. Now, this isn't your standard parallel cable, because this is actually a null printer cable, allowing to connect two computers via the parallel port to copy files across. Now, this is a cable from PC Anywhere, which is a piece of software used to transfer files between computers via the parallel port, but you can also create your own cable. You just need to figure out the pin layout of this cable, but I have another video explaining that. I'll link to that in the description below. Now, another thing we need is some software to be able to use to copy files between computers. And as it turned out, that software was already available on the Grape machine because it did have a little application on the hard drive called LapLink. And LapLink is a piece of software that could be used back in the day to hook up two computers using either a serial or a parallel port and transfer files between the two systems. So that's definitely something that we're going to be using here. It did have some issues starting because of the sector not found errors on the hard drive, but eventually it did start, and we could see if we could get files copied between the two machines. Now, when you start LapLink, it kind of waits for a link with a remote system. So in order to create that link, we just need to start LapLink on another computer, and then both computers will be able to communicate. As you can see here on my Windows 98 machine, I can now see the content of the hard drive of the Grape machine and vice versa. Now, the user interface isn't the easiest one to use. It's a little bit, archaic to use. You can definitely see that this is an old application, but we will be able to copy files between the two machines, as you can see here. Now, don't expect a mega throughput in terms of copying files. We are using the parallel port. You can look here by copying a 108 kilobyte file that it does take a while, but the parallel port is a very convenient method. It is a lot faster than using something like a serial port or a zip drive or something like that. And using the network and transferring the hard drive to another PC is also a bit of a hassle. Now, because of the issues that we are having with the hard drive, some files will be more easy to copy than others. And when it hits such a file that it is not able to read on the Grape machine, it will throw an error. And the annoying thing about that is that although you can retry and you can abort the copy, there's no real way to ignore files and just continue on copying. So it's basically an all or nothing situation. Either you just keep on retrying, but if that fails, then yeah, nothing will get copied anymore. An alternative to using LapLink is the MS-DOS built-in tools Interlnk and Intersvr, where Intersvr is the server component that we will run on the Grape machine, and Interlnk is a device driver that we will use on the Windows 98 machine to hook up the two machines. So how does that work? Well, it's very simple. On the Grape machine, there is an executable called Intersvr, which is part of MS-DOS 6.22. We can just load that up, and it will load up a very simple user interface. And on the Windows 98 machine, we use Microsoft Interlnk, which will actually link up the client computer to the server. So what does that mean? Is that on the other computer, the Windows 98 computer, we will now have an E drive, which will correspond to the C drive on the Grape machine. And that then allows us easy access to that hard drive on the Grape machine using something like Norton Commander, which makes it very easy to browse files and copy files. And that's what we're going to be doing. And as soon as we start copying files, you will see that, on the server machine, the great machine, you will see some activity on the C drive, and that's just the client computer accessing that drive. Now, obviously, using this method, you can also have these bad sector error messages. Sometimes you can retry them and it will eventually succeed in copying the file, although it's not 100% sure in what kind of condition that file will be. But I have to say, I was able to get about 90 to 95% of all of the files copied onto my Windows 98 machine. So yeah, that's a pretty good result. And it's good to have a backup of all of these files, because now we can transfer them to another computer or use them in DosBox and then just go completely nuts on the actual hard drive without risking to lose any data. And of course, now that we have all of the files copied onto another computer, it's very easy to import all of these files into something like DosBox so that we can, explore the files, the applications, the games from the comfort of a modern PC, which is, of course, very convenient. Also taking into account that on the original hard drive, the bad sector issue is still present. So this gives us, a nice way to kind of go over what was installed on the machine. And it also gives us some confidence that we have a backup of all of the files so that we can now start experimenting with the data a little bit, see what we have here without the fear of losing everything if we ever decide to reformat the hard drive on the original hardware. Something that I am going to do just to see if the hard drive is still in a state where it is still usable. Now I am going to be making two separate videos where I will dedicate some time looking at both the games and the applications which were available on this PC. But in this video I also wanted to give you like a glimpse of the kind of software that you find on an old system like this. I mean, there was about 20 megabytes worth of data on the hard drive, compressed, that leads up to like a 6 megabyte file, which is pretty amazing. Now, one of the things that I found on this computer was Turbo Pascal, which was a blast from the past. I think a lot of people did their initial software development steps using something like Turbo Pascal. It also contained GW Basic and lots of basic applications, but it's nice to see the Turbo Pascal editor and compiler doing its thing here. And it was also nice to see that, I tried running this on the Athlon XP machine, and when I ran the exact same application here, you could see that the PC was definitely too fast for these demonstration programs, as the sound that you got out of these applications was not the same as you got on the original hardware. Now, the machine also contained antivirus software, so there was a virus scanner installed on this machine, and when I started the application I noticed that it was a virus scanner from IBM, and it was for internal use only. Now, unfortunately, due to the condition of the hard drive with the bad sectors, it wasn't able to do a complete scan, but I did throw in my stoned virus infected floppy in here and try to do a scan of that, and it did in fact find the stoned virus on my floppy drive. So I'm not really sure what kind of virus scanner this is, but it is definitely very old. It's version 2.1.5, and it did find the stoned virus on my floppy, so that was nice. It also contained a copy of Microsoft Windows version 1.03. Now, I wasn't able to get it started because it started beeping frantically. And I also noticed while I was copying all of the files onto the other computer that lots of executables of this Windows 1.03 were bad, and I wasn't able to copy them. It also contained Lotus 123, which is a very popular spreadsheet from back in the day. Again, sector not found errors, but I was able to continue, and eventually I was able to start the application. Now, I didn't find any spreadsheets on the computer from the original user, so I just decided to create one myself. I really enjoy working with these old applications, and I find it really mind-boggling that, people actually got lots of work done back in the day using these applications that we now consider to be very, very basic. So yeah, another thing I noticed is that with some applications, as I was launching the executable, I got the sector not found error. I could retry that and the application would eventually start, only to end up hanging. So I guess somehow these executables got corrupted and I wasn't able to launch the application. I also noticed the same thing with a couple of games where it would simply hang. And upon comparing executables, one coming from the Great Machine and another coming from an internet download, same application, same file, same version, you could clearly see that some bytes got shifted somewhere in the executable, which causes that kind of data corruption and causes certain applications to not start. Another cool example of data corruption is in this Pac-Man clone here, where, as we are playing the game, initially everything is running fine, but very soon into the game you see something very weird. If you just look at the ghosts over there, you can see that they can kind of crawl through walls, they can go outside of the playing field, and if you try to grab them, it's just impossible. So something is definitely up with this particular executable of Pac-Man. And sure enough, if we take a look with our hex editor, we can see that in the executable from the Great Machine, 2 bytes differ from the ones in the original version, which causes this kind of corruption. But yeah, luckily lots of applications and games did start. For example, this Pianoman here, I was able to load up files just fine. And it's just really cool to see these old applications on this old computer. Lots of games were running fine as well, like this very basic Tetris clone here, made in Holland with the C source code included. We also had PGA Golf Tour by Electronic Arts, for example, a game from 1990, which was a bit of a stretch to run on this XT class machine. We also had Mahjong available here on the PC, a Chinese board game running in Hercules mode here. So yeah, pretty high resolution, obviously monochrome due to the limitations of the display. Not the fastest game, just look at the speed or the amount of time it takes to render the initial board. So yeah, it just goes to show how different things were back in the day, and people had a lot more patience in terms of playing games, I can imagine. So yeah, like I said earlier, I'm going to do a separate video on the games, focusing on the games which were on this PC, the various graphics modes that you could run these games in, and just give you an overview of every game which was installed here. I'm going to do the same with the application and the utilities that were there, like Lotus, Symphony, Draw Assist, Print Master. So there were lots of cool applications installed that definitely deserve their own little video. So yeah, that's about it for me for now. I was happy to be able to copy all of the files. I think I will be able to fix most of the corrupt files as well. And in the next video, we're going to be exploring both the games, the applications, and also take a look at some of the files that the original owner left on this PC here, because this will give us an idea on who used this PC, what the PC was for, and just learn a little bit more about its history. I'm obviously going to respect the privacy of the original owner and not show any private details, but it is fun to see, for example, somebody's old CD collection on a computer like this, or see just what kind of documents and drawings are stored on this computer. So yeah, I really hope to see you guys in the next one. Enjoy the holidays. I wish you all the best for 2022. And hopefully I'll see you in the following videos. Bye bye, take care.